Hi guys, it's Naren2045 and welcome back to more yarn nonsense, I guess. Anyway, I am a vendor at a farmer's market. I go every Saturday, or almost every Saturday, and just try and sell off what I can. And I need to make a few more keychains at the very least. Because I have these little mushroom guy keychains, and they're very popular. I just sold out of them. So I'm gonna go. I can't speak. I'm gonna go get comfy on the couch, and you guys can watch me crochet.
True gender, right? Of a person based on their own perception, right? They think that they always get it right, and I mean, obviously that's demonstrably wrong because we could point to a million examples of gender critical people getting it wrong, including like just silly things where someone online will like post a picture of J.K. Rowling to some transphobic person and being like, "So are you saying that this is a man?" And they'll be like, "Yes, that's a man," because they've been primed by the situation to think that the picture is going to be of a trans woman, so it causes them to perceive the woman in it as quote a man, right? And anyone could be transvestigated in this way. And what they're doing is they're exploiting a kind of feminist idea that like women need to trust intuitions. We all need to trust our gut because there's people who will try to gaslight women and who will try to use the norms of femininity and agreeableness to put women in uncomfortable situations. Okay, I understand that that's where this idea comes from, but the problem with always trust your gut is like, what if your gut is racist? And it probably is, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a situation where always your gut is always right is not only incorrect, it's actually making you the dangerous aggressor. I mean, you could point to other situations like, I don't know, white women calling the police on black and brown men because you know they had a bad feeling about it.
I mean, it's very like Emmett Till.
It's very Emmett Till, yeah, exactly. And the concept of white woman tears is a
Hi guys, I just finished making all of my mushroom tops for right now at least. I'm going to make 4 mushrooms because I have 4 different colors of skin tones, and I am going to use those for the bodies. So I have this one, which is in Premier Poppy, and then these 3. Oh, you can't see. There we go. Oh. Those are Premier Puzzle Shimmer. So now I'm going to make all their bodies.
Explain why. Not only do I not want to talk about trans fairness in sports because Iman isn't trans, no one in the story is trans. This was never actually like should have been about trans people in sports, but also that's not the real reason. The real reason I don't want to talk about it is because I don't think that the trans fairness in sports debate is a legitimate debate, or at least it's not the one that we've turned it into. And I don't want to give credence to what I think is a stupid conversation. And the reason that I say that is because I don't think the people who start these conversations, these debates about trans inclusion in sports, actually care about fairness in sports or trans people who participate in them. Trans people are such a small minority of the population. Trans athletes are even proportionally a statistically smaller group than cis athletes. This is such a non-issue on so many levels. Like when we are having the argument about trans sports and should they or shouldn't they, it's like it is almost always a hypothetical. What I think these debates really are people whose ultimate goal is for trans people to not exist in public life, people whose goal is to strip trans people of fundamental rights, not just to play in sports, but healthcare, being legally recognized as people they say they are, that kind of thing. I think the trans sports debate is their way to get you to like dance with them. Right. I think if we turn this into a metaphor of like dance, I think they're trying to drag you out on the dance floor of like entertaining their desire for trans people to not have human rights. And I think if they come out and tell you they don't want trans people to have human rights, you're going to be like, well, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not a terrible person. I think it's an easier entry point for them to get you out. But it wouldn't be fair, right? If trans women were to compete with cis women. And that's like, they're appealing to logic a little bit because like you have this primal way to be like, oh, well, no, but if you were born as a man, and they're dragging you on the dance floor a little bit. And I think that's where they get you to think, well, no, but then trans women aren't really women. And then you're also thinking about, well, do trans women pose a physical danger to cis women? And they're like getting these gears turning into your head. And, you know, are trans women stealing cis women's valor and achievements or jobs? And then all of a sudden you're like doing the tango with a transphobe who has fully roped you into this conversation that I just don't want to have. And so I don't give this an inch because I don't think that anyone who starts these conversations about trans fairness in sports actually cares. I don't think that's what it's about.
And you know that that's the case because most of the people who at a high level are bringing this rhetoric up are people who never talk about women's sports in any other context. They don't watch women's sports. They don't know anything about women's sports. They're not interested in it. But it's like you say, it's a wedge issue. It's to mix a metaphor, it's a foot in the door. You know, another reason, you know, is like I, as a trans person, am very often approached online or even offline by people who demand to have an explanation from me as to like, okay, but why are trans women trying to like dominate all the women's sports? And it's like, well, one, like, why am I being asked about this? Because I'm trans. I never talk about sports outside of when people approach me.
Hi guys, it's a few days later, but I have finished the mushrooms now, and I wanted to show you all the results. So, here are the three... There we go, now you can see all their eyes. Oh. There. And this is the one with Poppy. It's harder to see his eyes on camera because of the dark body color. But yeah, now those are all done. And I will sell them at markets now. Anyway, Naren 2045 out.